Okay, so we are live. Hi everybody. Hello again. It is Michelle at Lone Star Left. I am here with three more amazing, fantastic candidates. So I will go around. They'll each introduce themselves. Let's start with Zach. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you for having me, Michelle. It's an honor and a pleasure. I really appreciate it. I'm running for House District 19. My name is Zach Vance. I am in a primary, so it's going to be. It's not. It's a good primary. I was born and raised in Fort Bend County, Texas, and I graduated high school in Dallas, and then I went to school at Stephen F. Austin State University for a little while. I ended up leaving school and joining the Marines in 2008. And then I was wounded in the Marine Corps, and I was medically retired in 2013. I went back to school to the University of North Texas and got a degree in radio, film, and television. From there, I worked at a news station out in Savannah, Georgia, as a floor director, and then moved back to Texas in 2018 to Lago Vista area. And I worked at Spectrum News downtown as a master control floor director and audio operator. Um, while working at the news station, I spent a lot of time at the Capitol during the 86 legislative session. And I just knew things were going to get bad as long as things were going to get bad if things didn't change. If we couldn't get rid of Dan Patrick, nothing's ever going to change. And so at the time, I knew that Mike Collier was going to get the Democratic nomination for lieutenant governor. And so I wanted to see what would happen if I ran in the Republican primary on a Democratic platform, in which I ended up doing that in 2022 in the midterms. Um, uh, the thing about the primary is I was really naive in thinking that anybody that votes in the Republican primary is going to be hardcore Republicans. And running on a Democratic platform, any Republican that checked out my platform or heard me speak was instantly tell that I'm not a Republican. And so I would have needed 1.5 million Democrats to vote in the Republican primary, and I found out. I mean, that's kind of a big no-no. So it didn't really work out for me. But I knew that I really want things to change, and I really care about people, and I understand. I understand people, and I understand people's motivations, and I know why Democrats keep losing. That's why I decided to run for House District 19. I initially was going to run for the Senate seat, but I kind of saw how that was going to go, and I quickly changed my mind. But the House District 19 is it's a 70-30 Republican district, and I just want to show Democrats who are running statewide and running in Republican districts what you need to do to change your campaign tactics. A lot of it comes down to the immigration, and a lot of it comes down to your candidate's personality and your posturing and how you treat your other candidate and how your other candidate talks about you, but also on the news and on social media. But yeah, I care about people, and I just want things to change, and I know that I can do that. I know that if I'm the Democratic nominee, I know I can get people to see the world differently. People people's perceptions about the Democratic Party, but also about Texas and about real issues has to change, and people's view on immigration has to change, or it's too many people's top priority. And I know I can get people to knock it down and actually care about real issues.
Okay, all right, perfect. So let's go to the next candidate. It is my friend Perla. She is running for House District 93 against one of the most terrible Republicans in the House. So she'll tell you a little bit more about it. Perla, go ahead.
Yes, so my name is Perla Bajorquez. I am running for State Representative, District 93, and that is North Fort Worth, Keller, Saginaw, Blue Mound, a little bit of Haslett, and the Motor Speedway. I am a baseball mom, a gymnastics mom, part of the PTA. I'm a former paralegal and educator. My children are growing up here in Northwest ISD. We're part of this community. We love our community. A big reason of why I am running is because our current representative does not represent our beautiful community. It's so diverse here in North Texas. We have so many families who have moved here because a lot of it is new builds, new communities, all the things. And so just that negativity and all of that he's brought to the media and everybody's attention is not a representative of my community. I promise you guys, we have so many great families in this area. I have experience with a lot of laws, drafting petitions, reading those law transcripts, all the things. I love doing that. That's the nerd in me, I think. But I have experience just with immigration laws, criminal, family court, housing, banking laws. I studied education, obviously, as a former educator, but just those laws and histories in place, if you're well aware of what's going on, you can kind of dictate of what might happen in the future. And so when I was watching these bills being drafted and these extremism things being pushed, like in my head, all of that just immediately kicked back in. And it's like, well, this is going to happen if that happens, A, B, or C, these are the options. And so I just thought it was really important for me to stand up for my community and actually represent the families that live here, and that are planning to stay here forever and raise our kids and communities and all the things. But my platform, my priorities are the education, getting that funding to our educators, especially with that, excess funding that we had available, billions, and none of it went to educators. And all of my communities are feeling the crunch. I go to the Keller ISD board meetings, the Fort Worth ISD board meetings. Two other districts is Northwest ISD and Eagle Mountain Saginaw. We have 4 huge school districts that are connected to these boundaries, but those are so many families that are affected by all of these lack of funding, which affects their librarians, their IT, even just the safety bill that we have to have the security guards. Those are funds that would have to be prioritized to follow the laws, and it's not really benefiting the children and the families like they should be. So prioritizing that money for education is really one of my biggest platforms. Healthcare, just having bodily autonomy for women and men, whatever you want to do with your body. We need that less government overreach and that small government that they like to toot, or tout, and make it small government and stay away from our bodies and those healthcare decisions that are life and death for women and children and, everybody. Those are decisions that you need to be making with your physician, with your doctor, with your God and your soul. It shouldn't be Nate Schatzline telling people that they can't have access to this stuff. And, freedom, we're all for freedom. And if you start taking those choices away, how much freedom are we actually having? So the education, the healthcare, and obviously a safe and secure border. I myself am probably one of the only people in many rooms that I step in that understand what it feels like to cross in and out of the United States border. I was born in Oklahoma and raised in Kansas, but I have traveled to Mexico every summer of my life. My children travel to Mexico every summer of their life. This is safety concerns. And obviously as a nation, we want to feel safe and make sure that our borders are, up and functioning. And so I just feel like my experience brings so much more worldview knowledge to this important topic that the whole nation's talking about, but I firsthand see it and experience it. We need bigger ports of entry so that they can process those asylum cases. And in order to process those asylum cases in a timely fashion, we need more immigration judges. So it's this domino effect of where you start taking those resources away, and then you start getting those lines of the asylum cases or migrants. And really, if you think about all the communities that come here in the history of the United States, it's always something happened to some other country and they were sold the American dream. And so they want to be here, but, how are they going to get here legally? My uncle who migrated here, from Mexico, has waited 20 years for his citizenship paperwork. He's been working and just scared for his life for 20 years because it's taken that long to get his citizenship paperwork. Like I said, every case is different. All the things are different. But if you think about it, when there's stability in another part of the world, those people are the ones that come to America to try to claim asylum. And there needs to be some type of unified, formal process, and it's not chaos every time that something shifts in the world. It's like we need to be more prepared, and we need to treat them more with humanity, because calling them illegal aliens is not humanity. It's actually, making them feel like less human, subhuman, and that's how we should treat them. But also the money, I think just me financially, if you have millions of dollars, which it costs Texans 2.5 million per week of our tax money to fund the Operation Lone Star. And what are we doing with that? We're shipping people to Colorado, to Chicago, to New York. Like those funds should be going to those immigration judges, the ports of entries, and the things to pull our border up. We're paying for the border. It was supposed to be Mexico, right? Texans and our taxes paying for the border. So
Yeah.
those are my priorities. Sorry, the education, the healthcare, and safe and secure borders.
And I think we'll get back to some of those issues in our conversation, but I want to move on. And last but not least, Dr. Brian Williams. He is running for Congressional District 32. Dr. Williams, will you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me on the show today. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Dr. Brian Williams. I'm running for U.S. Congress in District 32, which covers much of Dallas County. This is the open seat vacated by Colin Allred, who is running for Senate against Ted Cruz. I'm running because our country's in a crisis. Congress is broken, and I think we need a new kind of leader from the front lines who understands what is at stake. And as a trauma surgeon and a veteran, I've just seen the worst that humanity can do when it comes to gun violence, and due to lack of access to affordable health care, and due to restriction on abortion rights. And that's why I'm running. I'm not a politician, but my life has been about public service. I'm a proud graduate of the United States Air Force Academy, trauma surgeon, served here in Dallas at Parkland Hospital, and I'm also a former health policy advisor to Speaker Nancy Pelosi. But first and foremost, I'm a husband, married 18 years, father of a 13-year-old girl, and we have 2 dogs when we call East Dallas our home. Some people in the area may know me from the shooting of Dallas police officers that occurred in July 2016. There was 14 police officers that were shot. 7 were brought to Parkland Hospital when I was working that night as a trauma surgeon, and 3 of those officers died. And it's a night that I still think about every day, because I did something I've done way too many times, which is just change out of my bloodied scrubs, walk into a room, and tell a mother and father about the death of their child. And it's a night that changed me. And I don't know if you had that moment in your life where something happens and you know that you're different afterwards. That was it for me. And I realized I had to take my experience as a veteran, as a doctor, and do more to be part of the healing of the community outside of the hospital. So I began to do other roles. I was served as the chair of the Police Review Board, appointed by the mayor. I served as a special advisor for health equity, appointed by our county judge. But most recently, I actually served in Washington as a health policy advisor for Democratic leaders like Senator Chris Murphy and for Speaker Pelosi. And in that role, I had a chance to write and help pass monumental legislation for gun safety and for healthcare, including the bipartisan Safer Communities Act that we passed after the mass shooting in Uvalde 2 years ago. But there's more work to be done, much more work, and that's why I'm running, because we right now we live in an era where gun violence is the #1 cause leading death of our children, the leading cause of death for our children. Healthcare is unaffordable to millions. Ongoing attacks on abortion rights, and our democracy is still under threat. And so that's why I'm running for this district. It's an opportunity for me to take my experience locally at the federal level and make a big difference on a much larger scale. So I'm asking people to join me in this fight so we can defeat the gun lobby, keep our communities safe. We can restore abortion rights nationwide. We can lower healthcare costs, and we can work to preserve our democracy. So if you like what you heard, just visit my website, drbrianwilliamsforcongress.com, to learn more. And we're taking all sorts of volunteers to keep this campaign rolling on towards victory. And thanks for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really like it. And you and Perla, you both mentioned healthcare, you both mentioned women's rights. That's where I got this t-shirt just this last week. And the reason I got it is because Congress is now pushing the Life at Conception Act. And that is, it's going to ban a lot of things. It's going to ban IVF. It's going to ban IUDs. It's just not good business for women. So I definitely want to get you guys' thoughts on it. And, what do we have to do going forward to make sure that women are protected, but more in a broader sense that, Texans have access to the healthcare that they need. So why don't we just start with you, Dr. Brian, or Dr. Williams, what are your thoughts?
No, I think what you're talking about, this is the importance of the voices at the table that are influencing policy. Now, in Congress, there are only 19 doctors, 3 of whom are Democrats. So, right, we just need more doctors who understand what it's like to take care of patients. And for me, having seen the impact of bad policy, my patients who can't afford their medications or see a doctor come in with late-stage disease, I've had to help operate on women who are near death due to a life-threatening reproductive emergency. So this is This is a real concern. But just like you mentioned, every day people are making decisions about their reproductive health, and that is between the women, their loved ones, and their doctors. And politicians have no role in that. So, as a doctor in Congress, I can bring a perspective that is much needed that talks about what it means when you start to restrict health care, because those most in need suffer the most. We have to be a voice at the table to ensure that we restore abortion rights, that codify Roe v. Wade, and ensure women have their access to all because abortion care is health care, and have access to the full range of reproductive options. End of story. That's between women, their doctors, and the people and their loved ones. So take politicians out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll go to you, Zach, because right now in Texas, there are 6 million people that are uninsured, and the legislator has refused to expand Medicaid. They've really refused to do a lot of stuff, but there's a good chance that the House may flip, fingers crossed, this coming year. So if it does flip, if you're elected, what do you think that we should do to make sure that women and all Texans have the access to health care that they need?
Yeah, absolutely. So in order for it to flip, it's going to take 12 House seats. And you're right, there's really only 1 or 2 that's even close to flipping. But if elected, yeah, absolutely, expand Medicaid, and just we need to figure out a way to get people more I think the state should come up with its own insurance program. I think figuring a lot of things need to change. We need more money in the first place, but I think the state should come up with its own insurance program to cover the people that Medicaid doesn't, and the people in between. More people need to get insurance. But I'll also, another big thing is uninsured people going to emergency rooms. Like, that's a huge chunk of our tax dollars. So if we can get those people insured, it would cost us we would save so much money by getting everybody insured who goes to the emergency room. It would lower our property taxes, that's for sure.
Okay. And Perla, the same question to you. I have a really good feeling about your race. I'm not going to jinx you or anything again, fingers crossed. But what would you do? I mean, if you're elected, what do we do about women's healthcare and healthcare access in general in Texas?
Sure. So I wanted to start kind of like Dr. Williams said, we need better representation. Obviously, we need more women at the table when we're talking about our body and our function and society in general. We shouldn't be talked about like we're not sitting in the same room. This is our uterus, it's our body, all the things. So just better representation at the table. Obviously, with the doctors and the specialists, I feel like a lot of these bills are just kind of being pushed through, and the people signing and co-signing don't even understand the science behind them. Because when we go into the IVF and we start talking about these embryos or babies, it's like, sir, do you understand that that seed is not a flower until you plant it and water it, it grows? With these embryos, it's basically science. It's a little egg, yes, but you have to insert it. You have to be under all of these special circumstances for it to maybe be a viable fetus at some point, not even a baby yet, to get to the fetus point and then be able to survive and be functioning as a baby. So one, we have to just get better representation there, and people who understand the science behind these bills, as opposed to just silly-nilly, this is my religious belief and let's sign off on this and everybody needs to go along with it because it's my religious belief. So just getting more of an open minded, not reaching across the aisle as I'm going to agree with them and they're going to agree with me, but we need to be able to have a conversation at the table like adults. There is no reason that one bill should just not be absolutely considered because somebody's a Republican and I'm a Democrat and we're just not going to pass this bill. So just making sure that those important bills do get pushed through and making people sign on my bill. Just kidding. But really, it is a skill to be able to communicate with people who want absolutely nothing to do with you. And I have those skills. I've been able to de-escalate very high situations, if you want to say, like just crazy situations with the family law and foster care and all the things I've dealt with. I feel like I've done with emergency situations very well, especially with the communication. But for reproductive health in Texas, we need to take the stigma away of what pro-choice and pro-life is. Let's not even use those words. Let's just use the scientific, words in there, which is, this is a fetus, again, with embryo fetus baby. That's the language that everybody should be understanding, as opposed to just the extremism and all the things that they're trying to do. But access to healthcare, take the stigma away from it, and make sure that constituents are informed, where they can access it. I know we're creating health deserts because doctors don't want to live here if they're going to be their license in, jeopardy. Dr. Williams, would you say if they told you you might lose your license because you're going to practice what you've always practiced? Like,
Yeah.
Well, can I answer, Michelle?
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Well, we have to stay here and fight. We have to stay here and fight for the future of our children. So no matter how challenging it gets, and no matter how concerned we are, I will stay here and fight, recognizing that it's a challenge. But I also just want to add on to something that Perla said about the importance of science-minded people in Congress who are in the legislature as well, who think critically about the bills that they're passing, right? There's this attack on science, this anti-science rhetoric that's going on. We need to bring some more of that critical thinking back. So I totally want to amplify what Perla said there. And what Zach said earlier about Medicaid in Texas, just recognize that Medicaid is not just for low-income people. Medicaid is also the #1 provider for maternal services in the country, #1 provider for mental health services, the #1 provider for long-term care. So it does so much more and could transform the lives of so many Texans if we were to expand Medicaid. Clearly a state issue, but as a member of Congress, I would continue to champion Medicaid expansion.
Okay, I like it. So going back to something that you were talking about earlier, Perla, because you guys know that I cannot let any of this go by without talking about the border, because it is a mess. Greg Abbott and Texas Republicans have spent around $13 billion on Operation Lone Star and different border activities, and really just the last like 4 years. It's unsustainable. It's being paid with our tax dollars, and it's not having any impact on migration. So what does the Texas House, Perla, what does the Texas House need to do to, I guess, rein in Greg Abbott and, stop this madness that we're seeing down south?
So I don't know what the House can do to rein in the governor, legally, or just, and well, no, I do. We saw it with the vouchers. We saw it with those rural Republicans that said, this is going to be terrible for my community, and I'm going to vote no on this because it's terrible for my community. That's what we need to do. It needs to be a united front every time. Do you know how many more things we could get accomplished if it wasn't like a tug of war? And it's like, no, this is, and I'm coming into this mindset with the district that I live in. I have a lot of Republicans around me, but Tarrant County voted Biden in 2016, So I have those Republicans that I know that are completely anti-crazy and anti-MAGA and anti-all that. But when I'm coming into here, I'm thinking like, you guys, we're on the same team with this priority. Education is a priority for us, right? Yes, everybody's like, yes, collectively, this is a priority for us. So we're going to stick together. This is where we're going to like keep our heels dragged in, all the things. And it worked temporarily. I don't know, but it worked for those special sessions, which wasted more money. And also, but yeah, the Operation Lone Star is terrible. So that's reining in the governor, I guess, just making sure that we all know what the priority is for communities and standing together on those things. They've said it time and time again that a lot of these tactics are just fundraising tactics, fear-mongering tactics. So really just, I think tackling that disinformation and just blatant lies is really important, as just communities in general, like, is it when they start seeing invasion, I'm like, whoa, we are not in a war, do not use that language, because that language means something else in Ukraine, and it means something else in Gaza, and when you say invade, it gets the community on a different level of alertness. And then, crazy things start happening when we get those truckers coming from who knows where to go protect our borders because it's being invaded. So we need to, I think the House, what they can do is make sure that that language is not being used. Pass a bill, hey, you cannot be using language that encourages war tactic responses in a state that is not being attacked by anybody. It's just, we haven't fixed the border issues. And again, so it goes to funding those immigration judges so they can process those asylum cases. But also, again, with the stability in different parts of the world, like, what are we doing as the United States, sometimes we poke the bear and then we're like, we have all sorts of migrants here. It's like, well, what did we do to either add or take away from the stability in their country to get them where they're at? Because this isn't brand new. It's not like, oh, yesterday these countries started fighting with each other. It's like, no, we've been an ally of Israel for how long? So it's like, we're their ally, but it's like, what are we doing to add or take away to the stability in that area?
Mhm.
I definitely think if we had reaching out, and even just those asylum offices in other countries, like, hey, no, you need to check in at this port in your country, and then eventually we'll see if you're accepted and you can migrate up to here. But there's none of that. So everybody's from China, Ukraine, all the Latin American countries are like, let's truck on up there, so just stability and passing the language law, because you cannot be using that language as the leader of a huge state. We're bigger than a lot of other countries, and it's just so sorry. That's
Yeah.
my overall answer.
Yeah. And I agree that language is irresponsible. And so, you mentioned the truckers going down there, and just a quick, side note, when those truckers went down there that week, one of them robbed a bank. Another one of them, or I don't know if there might have been a group, I don't know, robbed the food pantry, and there was like over a dozen arrests or something. So these are not good people. They are not sending their best. So
Yeah.
I will move to you, Zach, and along that same questioning, what do we do about the Republican antics at the border? From a legislative perspective, what can we do?
In all honesty, being the minority party, there isn't anything we can do. The border is Greg Abbott's bread and butter, and it's most Republicans' bread and butter. And the thing about the issue with the border is it's an issue that affects human nature and subconscious emotion. When it comes to humanity, you have people who have empathy for other people, which is like most Democrats. Then you have people who have hate in their heart, which is the far right. And then a huge number of people don't have empathy and they don't have hate. So they kind of just have indifference to other people. When you blast those people with images of people coming across the border, it creates an emotional response of get these people out of here, people who don't look like you and talk like you. It's a subconscious emotion. It triggers in them. This is my top priority now. This is the one thing I care about, and I have to vote based on this issue. And that's what has to change. We have to hit on these people that immigration is an important issue, but it's not the most important issue. People need to care about education. People need to care about water issues. People need to care about healthcare. And a lot of people do. A majority of voters are pro-choice. A majority of voters do want to raise the age for kids to buy firearms to 21. But when you have those people who have that top priority of immigration, nothing else matters. We have to get people to bring that issue down and make it not so much of a priority. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But one of the most important ways is saying, hey, if you care about that problem more than you care about your children and your grandchildren's education, you need to pull your head out of your ass. You have to care about these things. And also hitting on them and saying, real adults care about real problems. And you need to be a real adult and care about the issues that are affecting this state and each other. Too many people in this state don't care about other people. It's me, what's good for me, and what can I get out of this? And most people see people coming across the border on the news or on social media, and they're like, that's going to affect me. When in reality, immigration has no effect on your day-to-day life at all. And people need to know that. But when it comes to the legislation, being the minority party, we can't do anything until we get Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, and Paxton out of office. And that's going to take hitting on these people who care so much about it and getting them to drop that issue, at least down one or two, and getting them to care about real issues. And until we can do that, it's going to be a Republican-led state until we can get those people to care about other people, care about their children, care about their neighbors. And until that happens, nothing's going to change.
Okay. Well, that was a good answer. Not not a happy answer, but we understand. I mean, we're all Texans. We've all lived under Republican rule for way too long, which is why it's important to vote, guys. But I want to switch gears over to you, Dr. Williams. As far as immigration goes, it really is Congress's job. And we haven't passed immigration reform in 40 plus years. So what does Congress need to do to fix the border crisis? And, what are the steps that we need to take?
Well, at the federal level, we just missed a great opportunity, didn't we, Michelle? With the border policy, that bill that came out of the Senate got shuttered in the House, right? So important reason why we need to flip the House and get more Democrats in the House to make sure we get a comprehensive border security. Now that bill, I definitely had some issues with it because although it did provide border security, there was no discussion about a pathway to citizenship for immigrants that are already here. But however, our policy must be rooted in safety, security, and humanity, right? We have to ensure that our values as Americans are amplified in a border reform, and that requires bipartisan work. So ensuring that our border patrol agents have the resources they need to secure the border. Also ensuring that we can create a pathway to citizenship for people that are already here, including our dreamers. And we have to speed up the asylum process. I think Pearl mentioned this earlier about the backlog of asylum seekers coming to the country. There's about 1 million cases. So we need to speed up that process so people that are fleeing dangerous areas, seeking safety, can get into the country more quickly. All this has to be done, and that requires action at the federal level. But I also say, this also intersects with other issues. It's about the economy. It's also about healthcare. But I've seen in my patients that come to me late because they're afraid that seeing a doctor may impact their documentation status or their immigration status or someone in their family. So they delay healthcare, and then they're suffering needlessly because of that. So these are many of the reasons why comprehensive reform at the federal level needs to happen. We just had a golden opportunity to make some progress. You take the wins when you can, but there's still much more work to do. And certainly I am committed to doing what I can to ensure that to do my part to work to promote and pass comprehensive immigration reform.
Okay, good answer. So I do want to ask, each of you about different aspects of your campaign, because you guys each kind of have unique situations going on. And I want to start with you, Zach, because you did run as a Republican previously. And I think that's, knowledge for everybody. So if a Democrat is looking at you and you're on the ballot and they're apprehensive because of your previous record, what do you say to them to, reassure them that you're on our side?
For sure. And I think that's been a huge thing for this primary. As soon as that word Republican comes out of my mouth, people get a bad taste in their mouth, and they're really hesitant about me. I did a lot of interviews, and I did a lot of, so I guess I'll start with this. I did a lot of candidate forums traveling the state and going to these Republican groups and talking to them as Lieutenant Governor Forum. And everything that came out of my mouth was caring about people, change in the state. And the big thing I was hitting on was working together. As before, now I realize partisanship is dead because Republicans are never going to work with Democrats. But back then I thought there's still a chance. I said, we have to work together. There's a lot of them on the internet. I would just encourage anybody to. I did a lot of candidate guides and filled out with a lot of the news stations. There's so much out there that if they just Google my name and looked at what the things that I said running as a Republican, you would say, what the hell is this guy doing running as a Republican? He's definitely a Democrat. But the biggest thing I just want people to know that I care about people and I want to make people's lives better. And honestly, I'm not going to stop until I get the chance. I think I'd be a great Democratic general election candidate. And I want to show people what's possible because I know how to get people to change their mind. Because really, elections are won and lost by who can win over the people who are not moderate Republicans, because they're always going to go right, but winning over the right-leaning independents. That's the biggest thing. If whoever wins those right-leaning independents, wins the election. My district in House District 19 is Kendall, Gillespie, Burnett, and Blanco County. So they're super Republican. But so my goal for this is to get people to, it's going to have to take those Republican voters and smack them upside the head and say, what the hell are you thinking? But also give them a hug at the end and say, I care about you. The thing about me is, the thing about trying to get Republicans to vote for a Democrat, you're going to have to get people to vote for you who don't necessarily agree with you. And just letting them know that I'm a good person, that I care, even though I care about, we're not agree on a lot of things. Because I ran as a Republican on a Democratic platform. Somebody asked me what kind of candidate who I would resemble that's more mainstream. And I said, I'm Beto, but with a mean right hook, because I know how to knock down on these Republicans to make those people in the center say, I'm not like that. I'm not crazy. I'm not a Christian nationalist. And that's what it's going to take. But I would just say, just really go back and look at my history, look at the things I ran on as a Republican and see that that's definitely not the direction I was going in. I really ran on a Democratic platform just to see what would happen. I really was trying to get Democrats to vote in the Republican primary, not knowing that was such a big no-no, that people were like, no, do not do that. But I thought that if I could get enough people that really care, because it was right after the overturn of Roe v. Wade, and I thought people wanted change. And the way I looked at it was, you get two chances to take out Dan Patrick. You get the general, but also the primary. And I feel I can just get people to cross over enough people, because in the general election, you need 4 million votes. In the primary, you only needed 1.5 million. And so I really thought I could get people to turn out in big numbers in the primary. But the thing about it is, when I ran, I was the only person on the entire Republican ballot that was pro-public education and pro-choice. And I thought the news and other media outlets would say, hey, there's just one guy running to the left of Dan Patrick. But at the time, I'm kind of a really nervous person, and kind of the way I speak. And so I think people just really didn't take me seriously. And so people didn't put that spotlight on me and say, hey, this guy really has a chance. It was kind of like they kind of swept me under the rug. But the big thing about me, I really do care about people, and I want to make change in the state, and things aren't going to change until we can get these people in the middle to swing left. And I know I can do that.
Okay, good answer. And so then I will go to you, Dr. Williams, because you have probably the biggest primary right now in Texas. I think you have like 9 opponents. So what do you think sets you apart from the other 9 opponents in the race?
Yeah, this is an open seat. Colin Allred is running for Senate, and this is a seat that was drawn for a Democrat, and it is a majority-minority district. And what sets me apart is I bring, first and foremost, that I'm a veteran. I went to the Air Force Academy, and it is there I internalized these values of integrity and excellence and service before self. As a doctor, I've just been on the front lines of healthcare inequity and this epidemic of gun violence for decades. And I've just seen the worst that humanity can do when it comes to guns, and seen the worst human suffering that comes from lack of access to healthcare. And I also had the chance to work in Washington. I served as a congressional health policy advisor for first Senator Chris Murphy and then for Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And it was there I had a chance to just roll up my sleeves and get really deep into policy, writing legislation, gathering bipartisan support, and getting legislation passed. And I would say the signature bill would be the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. This was the most monumental gun safety bill passed in the generation that happened after the shooting in Uvalde. And that was the time I was working in Senator Murphy's office. It brought together gun owners, non-gun owners, Republicans, and Democrats, but to pass this bill that has saved many lives and will save thousands more. So my record of service to this country and its community as a veteran and doctor and someone on the Hill is what sets me apart from all the other candidates in this race. This is a campaign that's driven by purpose. I'm choosing to lead my career as a doctor so that I can make a bigger difference, because that's what this seat represents, an opportunity to make a much bigger difference in the community and the nation based on the experience that I can bring to the policy process that no other person in this race, and I will say very few in the country, can. Because one, I'd be the first trauma surgeon elected to Congress. And two, I'd be the first Black doctor who can vote in Congress. And it's about diversity of voices and experience influencing policy that can transform this nation.
Okay, I like it. And I hate to say it, and I know you probably hate to hear it, but it is more than likely that this race will go to a runoff between you and Julie Johnson. So we'll see how that turns out. I'll have to have you back to talk more when that does happen. But that's my prediction. So let's go to
Happy
you,
to
Perla.
come back, Michelle. Happy to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to you, Perla, because you, and I know we mentioned this at the beginning, are running against, I guess the proper word for him is a Christian fascist who has, completely involved himself in this mercy culture church that's a political church and has been indoctrinating. I don't know if that's the right word, but perhaps it is. Yeah. So, what do you see your challenges be, this year coming up to the November election?
Challenges for this year. I don't have a primary challenger, so really I've just been kind of harnessing all my energy on educating and engaging all voters. I really don't care what party you belong to, but I want you to know, are you registered? Have you updated your address? Do you know where your polling place? I feel like if all of us participate, then it would be such a better game to play, as opposed to voter suppression and all the other things that they try to do to try to get just certain people to vote. So that's, I guess, just one of the challenges is just overcoming all the things that have already happened. I feel like the church that he was recruited by, I use the word recruit, they already have ruffled too many feathers, and I know you're aware of what they've done. They've, when Nate wrote supported the anti-drag bill, somebody popped up with a video of him dressed in drag. So it's like, whoop, your community was absolutely ready to, check you and make sure you're not being a hypocrite as a state representative. But just all the book bans, you've had so many mom groups, and especially Keller ISD, because they are fighting, the Christian nationalist takeover of their school boards. You've had so many families come together to be like, absolutely not. We're not okay with book bans. We don't want our kids censored. Like, we want your religion and your political stuff out of the schools. So just overcoming all of, I don't know, all of the yuck, I want to just clean it up, keep it positive. This is who I am. These are all the communities I've worked with. This is what I can do. This is how we can come together to overcome it all together. I have a group of solid 10 people. I'm from Keller ISD, Northwest ISD, Fort Worth ISD, Saginaw, Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD, and just other community members come to my table to eat, but to just put in their 2 cents from all of these different areas, because these families are so diverse, and just they've already just been attacked, whether it's the immigrant stuff, the anti-LGBTQ community stuff, next, poor next. That's what we're trying to not happen here. We want those safe environments, especially for our students and where we live. Like, we should not be having any of these issues, but that's who he invited here. Like, he invited Charlie Kirk here. He invites Trump MAGA groups here. And so then we started seeing the swastika signs and people, the Torchy's tacos, Nazis at Torchy tacos. Like, that's crazy town. This is 2024. That is not socially acceptable to any community in America, but, especially not in Fort Worth. That's not what we want here. So that's one of the challenges. A lot of my campaign is going to go to persuasion, those leaning independents, but also those Republicans. I have a lot of Republicans that are just saying, that's not my group. Be like, I've been a Republican my whole life, and that's not who represents me. So how do I vote now? For me and for, not Trump, but just really reaching out to those voters, making the connection with them, and again, letting them know the things that they prioritize are my values as well. I was born on a farm in Oklahoma. You think I don't know about small communities and how we come together to rally just for, things burn down, you come together. Even, so I grew up in Dodge City, Kansas. I don't know if anybody knows about Dodge City, Kansas, but we have Dodge City Days every year. it brings in millions in tourism from people all over the United States, but also the world, because they want to come see the rodeos for 2 weeks at a time and the country concerts and all the things. But those are those community values that I've always carried with me, respecting and just building the bridges. I speak Spanish and English, so it's always been, these are the resources available. How do we get these people to connect with those resources? Leading a horse to water type thing, but just making sure that here in my community that people know that I exist, I am an option. I'm not coming in as a wrecking ball. I'm here to, let them know what my values are, and I'm pretty sure that we share a lot of those same values and priorities.
Okay, perfect. And I just want to add something, and this is from me, it's not from anybody else, but I just do want to add that Perla's opponent, Nate Schatzline, did take money from a neo-Nazi affiliated group and refused to return it. So everybody keep that in mind. So we are just about out of time. I want to give you guys each a couple minutes to wrap up. If you want to, say where they can find you, where people can find you online or on social media. So let's just start with you, Perla.
Sure. So please go to my website. It's perlafortexas.com, PERLAFOR, Texas.com. I have a lot of exciting stuff coming. I'm basically it's gonna be my coming out party. No, I'm just kidding. I already had my kickoff, but it is gonna be, now that the primary is over, this is all the strategies and all the things that I'm bringing to the table. And just to get everybody energized again, making sure that they are participating. We have local elections coming up. That's super important. Those are for those school boards, for your mayors, all the things. So make sure that you're participating in all of the different elections. Make sure that you're updating your address every time you move, because I know we're not like sticklers anymore. We're very mobile. But again, just perlafortexas.com. Thank you, Michelle, for having me, and for Dr. Thornler, thank you for your service. You should start off with I'm a veteran and a trauma surgeon, because that will give you the votes. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to you, Dr. Williams, if you want to do a quick wrap up.
Absolutely, Michelle. It's been a pleasure to be here. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. And just with Dr. Brian Williams, taking Perla's advice, I'm an Air Force veteran, proud graduate of the United States Air Force Academy, and trauma surgeon. And like I said, I'm running because I've just seen too much needless death and suffering due to guns, and too much needless death and suffering due to lack of access to affordable health care. I'm running to end this epidemic of gun violence, restore abortion rights nationwide, to defend our democracy, and to lower healthcare costs. You can learn more about my campaign and join Team Williams by visiting drbrianwilliamsforcongress.com.
Okay, and I will certainly do that. And thank you for your service. And then I will go on to you, Zach.
Thank you again, Michelle. I really appreciate it. I really like my primary opponent. I think he's a great person. We pretty much care about the exact same issues. The only difference is how we're going to campaign and if we win and go on to the general. I think Democrats in red districts and statewide Democrats need to change the way they campaign. And I want to change that. I want to try something different. Too many candidates are saying, the incumbent this, the incumbent that, I care about X, Y, Z. And if you care about that, vote for me, when it should be, no, you need to care about these issues, and you're wrong if you don't. And I think that's the way that's going to change. My website is www.abettertexas.com, and same for abettertexas.com on Twitter.
Okay, great. Well, I really thank you guys for coming on and talking to me about the issues. Everybody, if you have not voted yet, the last day for early voting is Friday. Make sure you get to the polls. Super Tuesday is next week. It'll be your last chance to vote, to make sure that you have the candidate you want when they beat the pants off of Republicans in November. So again, make sure you vote. Vote. And we'll